So do you think taking the kids out of school and their education was one of the most frightening things about going away?
Yeah, it was for me. I don't mind taking risks myself, but actually when you're taking risks with your kids' own future, obviously that's a terrifying thing to do. I wasn't very comfortable with that, but I think I got more comfortable with it as we went along when I saw actually what boat schooling could do for them. But it was just like hitting a big red button, like a big red eject button, and taking them out of school and then hoping for the best. You'd kind of think, now what? In fact, Yewan was saying that he couldn't understand why it took a full day to learn the same stuff that he was learning in 2 hours on the boat. I think that slow grind of the school day has really affected him. He really doesn't get it. He's used to 2 hours, bam, get his schooling done and then go out and play with the other kids. And now he's got to spend that 6 hours in the school day holding it in at kid energy to get through his school day before he can actually release it. And sometimes that doesn't play well in an institution. The other thing that brought it home to me as well was Darry's doing his talks on entomology now, and he's going to ant conferences and doing talks in schools on ants and entomology. And yet he was turned down for his GCSE biology, which just goes to show the narrow criteria that institutionalized teaching, mainstream teaching, judges kids on. Because he didn't have that coursework and those standardized results, he wasn't allowed to do the biology. And yet there's a kid who's absolutely fascinated with biology. You couldn't stop him from turning rocks over no matter where he was in the world. Because he was judged on that very narrow criteria, he didn't get to do the subject, which seems crazy to me. And that just kind of underlined everything I feel about mainstream education. You did most of the day-to-day schooling on the boat. What do you think? Did you generally worry that we were going to get things wrong?
I didn't at first, when we first left. I just gathered everything they had at school because they were only in junior school and just thought, well, we'll just repeat all this, the spellings, and had the books, and Rowan was quite up for working through them, and it was all good. I think as time went on, that first season, and things got a bit more complicated, and there was times when I couldn't help her when I started to worry a bit. And that's when I kind of stayed up late to try and work it out so I could help her the next day.
Yeah, I remember that, trying to stay one page ahead in the textbook.
Yeah, but it's also hard teaching your own kid when they see you don't really know it straight away. It doesn't help.
It kind of undermines your credibility a little bit, I guess.
So that's when I started panicking a little bit. It wasn't so bad with the younger ones because I knew what we were teaching them, but it got to year 7, first year of secondary school, and I realised that I can't remember half the stuff that I'd learned. But I think as time went on, I don't know, I felt like I got a bit better at it, started to understand it a bit more, and I realised there was a way of helping, maybe use more resources. I always panicked a little bit with the maths. You've got to learn the rules, and I didn't know all those rules, what they're learning now, and I've forgotten them.
And they changed as well a lot.
But there was a good book I used, which really helped. It seemed to clarify a lot of things, and I was always using that book just to try and make sure the kids felt like they were doing enough. So it isn't all about books, though, is it? As you mentioned, they learn from experience. So can you think of a moment where they learned more from experience?
I think there's a lot of times like that, particularly when you're in places like the Galapagos Islands. You've got evolutionary biology, the epicenter of it, right in front of you, and you're climbing volcanoes, and you don't just learn about what a volcano does on paper. The mountain is literally shaking under your feet. You can feel the power of it. Just the day-to-day things, particularly when we used to go to the beaches. Remember, we got stormbound in Fiji that time, and we were stuck there for a week. We couldn't get a Wi-Fi signal, and the kids every day would just go to the beach, and they started building this epic city with a couple of kids on our buddy boat. And so their English wasn't fantastic, and so you had the kids there building this mega city and dealing with resource management, architecture, politics, diplomacy, even environmental catastrophe when the tide used to come in and start destroying it. Sometimes I used to sit there and just listen to them, and it was just incredible. They were teaching themselves everything that you need to know in life just by sandcastle building. In fact, when we ended up in New Zealand, not long after that, they did the same thing on the beach, and there was the sandcastle competition going on, and they won the sandcastle competition. They won a couple of bodyboards. But it wasn't because they were trying to build anything epic. It was just because they were building this civilization that they'd built many times before across the South Pacific. So that's the type of learning that they get. It's not just sat in a classroom listening to a teacher drone on. They're actually living it and touching it and feeling it and dealing with people who speak a foreign language, dealing with materials, but also everything that's going on.
It's play, isn't it? And there is that question about whether children have enough time to play when they're at school all day. And because you do learn a lot from playing, don't you? Problem solve when you're quite creative.
But I think that's the thing about play is you can't quantify what they've learned. And that's what institutionalized learning is about. It's about tick box exercise. It's like, have they got to this stage by this point? And kids learn at different speeds as well and at different times. The thought of taking kids the same age through the same curriculum at the same time, using the same timetable, seems to me crazy now. We had 3 kids and they were all very different learners. When you're out there, they all find their own interest and they all learn at different speeds and different times, but they all learn. Kids are just naturally curious. So if you just give them free rein with their curiosity, they will teach themselves. They don't have to be put in an institution from 9 o'clock till 4 o'clock every day.
Yeah, I think that it's always a bit derogatory, that idea, isn't it? The kids are just playing, but actually playing is a really important part of learning. What you're doing is trying out different ideas.
Well, if you look at any mammal, the young are always playing and jumping about and play fighting and trying things out. Play is not just a frivolous thing. It's an important part of biology and psychology.
Yeah, you work out boundaries and you negotiate, you try different things out, see how they go down. And usually you come up with good solutions as well. And it's fun.
And especially if they're playing with other kids as well. They make rules up and then one kid cheats. And so they revisit those rules and change them again. And it's a very sort of malleable process and very organic. But they get there because they're basically programmed to be like that. And if that programming is not given a chance to test itself, then it's never going to develop. We're probably getting a bit philosophical on the teaching side, but I think the point is that the boat schooling isn't just about learning from a book. It's very experiential, it's very kinetic, and it's a lot of play. Do you remember that time on the beach when we just sat there and we just listened to them, and every day that civilization used to build up, and it was incredible watching it.
I'd say there's quite a few times when that happens. It started in Spain when we had COVID and we weren't allowed to go anywhere, but all children had to go out for 2 hours. And so every day we go to the beach. And every time we found a beach, we created different things.
Yeah.
And it carried on from there, really.
I don't think it's any surprise that a lot of the playgrounds in the old days used to have sand pits. Yeah, it's just fantastic learning tools.
Yeah.
So I've been getting into AI lately and I've been really fascinated, particularly on the prospect of having AI tutors, because I can imagine how that would be really, really useful. And not just on a boat, but for kids in general, that they can have personalized teaching right in front of them. For me, that sounds like a great thing to have, but I know you've got a few reservations about that.
Well, it depends what it is, really. If you're trying to work out the answers to some questions that you already have curiosity about, it would probably be brilliant. I mean, their kids use it all the time, Google. I know AI is slightly different, but I think it can be really good. If you know where you're going and you're trying to solve a problem, then I think it could be really good for that. But not everyone learns like that. Some people learn through visual way of doing things or trying things out. And I think that's where experience comes in. So us taking kids to a museum or something, first of all, they might not know what they're going to find out. But when they get there, they suddenly start seeing things and then it starts to feed that curiosity. And maybe then they could use AI afterwards. Oh, I went to this museum and saw this, and what can you tell me about that? But I think you've got to have the motivation first. Children really need to be interested in something, because if they're not interested, they just zone out.
You're thinking of AI as just a glorified search engine, and it's so much more than that. It learns as you learn. So if it learns that you work in a certain way, then it will adapt its teaching for that way. And if you start to get bored, it will detect that and it will start bringing in things that you react to more. It's a very, very bespoke.
Yeah, but it is on a screen though, isn't it? Digital.
Yes.
So that's what I'm trying to say. It's like some kids need to walk into a place to see it or touch it or see the context.
Oh, I see what you mean. But I'm not actually comparing it with that sort of experiential learning. What I'm trying to compare it with is that book learning that you learn at school. Because there were times when we had to learn from books, but instead of trying to just read a book and then learn the facts from it, using AI, it will actually take you there. It will absorb you through gameplay and just to make sure you're engaged with the subject matter. In no way I'm saying it's going to replace experiential learning.
Okay, so I mean, the only thing there then is it will feed the kids information, but isn't there a skill in just putting the effort into trying to find information out? Would you be motivated enough to listen to that information being fed to you?
It's not something that just delivers information. It will deliver an experience, whether it's through a game or a video. Or...
Make it more interesting.
That's right, yeah. And make the kids more engaged, and it'll detect when they're bored.
There's a lot of games like that already, isn't there? Geography games, where you have to plan certain things and solve certain problems. And yeah, it's definitely going to be more engaging for children. It's whether they get addicted to it and then it's a reward-based thing. So are they just interested in it just for the basic fact they're interested in it? Are they getting rewards and then fall addicted to the reward?
But you could say that about school learning? Are they addicted to the praise from the teacher or the extra points they get or the
Yeah.
grade they get?
Yeah. I suppose anything that motivates a child to start learning more, to enrich their thought processes, is effective, really.
Yeah, with our kids, it was chocolate.
You've got, as long as you get a balance between everything, because if you're sitting in front of an AI screen, then you're not maybe bouncing things off each other, and in life still need to be around different people. So you have to get the balance, really, don't you?
Well, there is that, yeah. I mean, there's that thing in a classroom, yeah, it could be institutionalized, but you have got a biological person in front of you. So it's not just the teaching, I guess it's the eye contact, it's how they handle situations, how they handle a joke that didn't work properly, or how they handle misbehavior. Kids are absorbing that all the time. It's the oxytocin when you get eye contact, or the dopamine hit when you get praise. I'll grant you that. Like I say, there should be a balance, really. I think AI will deliver some fantastic learning experiences, but I do think you need that human aspect to back it up.
You talk about AI replacing a teacher then?
Yes.
So everyone's on their own individual screen with AI?
Yes, but with the human facilitator. I'm more thinking of when we're on a boat, because you can't always be with a child. Even when you're homeschooling, you can't be with them every minute of every day. So there has to be a certain amount of independent learning.
Yeah, it's a great idea, really. I've noticed there's a lot of online schools now where actually use AI.
I think if they don't,
So-
they're going to be left way behind.
It does make it more efficient. And I suppose if you're only spending a couple of hours doing that and the rest of it is something else, basically why it shouldn't work, really.
I think we're heading into a golden era of independent education, particularly homeschooling, because I think AI will be an absolute godsend for those parents, because it is difficult. But if you could offload a little bit of that burden onto AI, I think that'd be great.
Yeah, if you're talking about just homeschooling, it would help because you've got 3 different ages, which we had, trying to learn 3 different things. You can't do that on your own.
And you certainly can't carry enough reference books you need.
No, we had a point where we had the youngest was learning how to read, so needed complete attention. And then eldest needed help with certain questions. Middle one was losing concentration.
It was like juggling those plates, wasn't it, on the stick, to keep them all going at the same time.
If there's something engaging for any one of them, that would have been already solved one problem. It is quite tricky, and I think it could help. And I think if you imagine a class of kids and some disrupting the class, the others didn't have to worry about it because they're concentrating with their AI tutor.
Like a WeWorks type thing where everybody's doing their independent learning, but they'll have one facilitator walking around making sure everybody's okay.
Yeah, and there are schools like that already that use AI. 2 hours of AI working on certain projects, and then they go off and do other things. But it's not all good being out of a school. So what do you think they missed most?
The obvious thing is team sports, I guess, and joining orchestras and anything to do with large groups of kids. There are certain things that a bigger institution can offer. The budget to do things on a larger scale. Like Yewan recently went off to do that Formula 24 and learn how to build an electric car and race it. There's just no way you can do that in a boat. There's plenty of electric motors, but probably nothing that's going to engage him in the same way that did. There are benefits and there are losses by taking your kid out of school. But having an experience in the world, I don't think you can recreate that in a classroom. I think that's the best thing you can give to your kid is experience in the world.
Team sports, yeah, that does make it more tricky, doesn't it? And that's a really great thing to have, to be able to do something together with a team, especially with sport. It builds a lot of confidence, doesn't it?
And I think coming back as well, when you're trying to reintegrate back in, our kids were fit, in fact, fitter than most of the kids in the classroom, but they didn't know the rules of rugby or cricket or football even. And so that was difficult. They had the energy and they had the fitness, but they didn't have this skill base or the rules.
It's fine if you're not back in that environment, but if you're in the environment, you suddenly feel different and left out, don't you?
Yeah. In fact, in many ways, I think the transition from boat schooling to land life was harder than the other way around, really.
We used to play some team sports, though, didn't we? We would do ultimate frisbee. We did that a lot. You do other sort of things together, like snorkeling together or diving together. I remember in Maldives, we ended up playing rounders on the beach a few times, which they loved. I do think they miss out on that. I also think, I don't know whether this is good or bad, but kids that go to school learn a structure and it's kind of ingrained in them that you just turn up, you get on with it. Not with all kids, but you follow a structure. And I have to be obediently follow, let's say. And I don't think our kids have learned to obediently follow the structure that a classroom leads you down.
Yeah, it's a double-edged sword.
They're used to getting something that's interesting and then pursuing that for a bit and then finding something else interesting, pursuing that, thinking of something, and we would engage them in conversation. But at school, you need to learn to just be quiet and get on with what the person's telling you and listen to the teachers.
Well, that's a crazy thing. The one thing they weren't used to is they'd be learning a subject and then the bell would go and then they'd suddenly have to be learning a different subject. And so that kind of organic learning, sometimes they would spend the whole day doing something, like trying to get coconuts out of a tree and then learning how to make bread out of it. You don't get that at school. You get halfway through that job and then the bell would go and then you'd have to go and learn something else. We were happy with the way that they were learning. And if they wanted to spend all day learning something, then they could, or if they just wanted to play and we could see that they were learning from the play, we just let them get on with it. But you can't do that in a school.
No, and you have to be able to follow because you're ready for your exam at the end of the term, which will be on that subject. Because we used to try and make it as interesting as possible. So if we're in one country, we'd learn that history. In another country, we'd learn that history. But we didn't just learn the stuff because you had to learn it. So now, if it's not interesting, then don't really want to learn it. That's the problem, isn't it?
There was nothing abstract at all. When we went to a country, we did try and steer the learning towards that.
Again, you can't do that at school. So therefore, they don't want to listen to someone that's boring, do they?
No, I think we met so many interesting people when we were out there, and they would gravitate towards interesting people. But as soon as an adult is not interesting, which, let's be charitable here, it's not all teachers, then they just switch off. And that's been a difficult transition back to land for them to grasp that.
So they're missing out on being able to be okay with things that are not very interesting.
Yeah, I would say so. We're trying to paint a picture here of why it's okay to take your kids out of school. So if somebody is planning on this sort of lifestyle and they're lying awake at night wondering and worrying, what sort of reassurance could you give them, do you think?
Well, I suppose nowadays you don't have to worry about the academic side, because even if you don't follow exactly what the school's doing, you can find an online school. If you want to keep them up to date and completely academic, there's plenty of online schools.
I'm so envious of parents now taking the kids out because they've got Starlink and they've got AI online learning. Being online 24 hours a day, again, that's a double-edged sword. But for the education side of things, I think it's fantastic.
There's never going to be a shortage of things to do because there's always something new to learn about. And then if you want to do it as a community-based thing, you just plan it around buddying with other boats as much as possible, which we did as well. And you just do some things together.
I wouldn't say we resisted finding other kids' boats, but we didn't really prioritize it. And it wasn't until we clicked on that they needed to be around other kids that made life so much easier.
But I think we couldn't find them in the Med very much in those days. It's more now, but in the Med, everyone seems to split apart a lot more.
I think for the next episode, we'll look at community, because community is vitally important. It wasn't something I held at all as a priority when we left, but it became clear that the kids do need other kids around and they need community.
I think actually doing lessons together is more difficult with other kids. They only really were at the time with our American friends because someone had a marine biology package and we did it diligently. All the kids came into one boat to do it and then they went to the other boat to do it. And it was the same package though, so it's the same lessons. It was very structured and it worked really well. But everyone always seems to be doing different schooling. You get on with your school generally and then you join together in the afternoon, or you go on a day trip. We used to do that, didn't we, sometimes? So no school in the morning, but it's a field trip all day.
There was nothing we didn't mention, was those Russian Ukrainian kids we met in Crete. It always seems to be the Russian kids who are really good at this sort of thing, but they were self-taught in just about everything. They just seem to have this unrelenting curiosity and drive to learn as much as they can.
Yeah, they had one phone for the whole family, just to bring it back to the screens again. But kids that haven't got anything else to do, nothing to distract them, they start to get curious and start to learn things and do things.
Well, boredom is a great driver of creativity.
I'm going to have to say it again, but kids on screens aren't bored anymore. There's plenty to do on your screen. The whole world of stuff. But if you take that away, they're like twiddling their thumbs. The little Russian kid that used to come around with his chess set under his arm.
Oh, George.
And didn't speak a word of English. He's like, play chess. And so then he learned, didn't he?
You learn English and our kids how to play chess.
Yeah, and they learned a tiny bit of Russian, didn't they? So they could communicate.
Yeah, that was great, that. And so I think in the next podcast, we'll come on to that. We'll start discussing community and how you find a community at sea. Because I think a lot of people think you're in isolation when you're sailing around the world on a boat, but actually there's a lot of people doing it. And if you coordinate correctly, you can actually have quite a supporting and strong and quite a large community out there.
Yeah.
Should we talk about that next week?
Okay, that sounds like a good plan.
Great. It's the pod. See you next week.
Bye.
Bye.